I've never imagined myself as the kind of filmmaker who is, I use the word, and it's going to sound like a negative word. I don't mean it in this way, but I'm not a mercenary. You know, I'm not someone who can like make a film about that person or that person out in the world who I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I feel comfortable talking to my mother intimately and my father intimately. I felt comfortable talking to my cousin Edwin intimately, you know, because, for instance, when I look at my cousin Edwin, when I look at his face, there's a lot more than meets the eye. I look at my cousin Edwin, and you know what? He looks like his father. And when I look at Edwin and I see his father's face, guess what? He looks like my grandmother. You know, his father looked like my grandmother. I see my grandmother's face in there too. And then when I see my grandmother's face, I also see my mother's face, right? And when I see my mother's face, guess what? Suddenly I'm mirroring myself somehow. I'm seeing 4 generations later, I'm seeing something of me visually, you know, that I can't put my finger on, but it's very mysterious, but it's also very compelling. And when I look at Edwin, I'm seeing all those connections back to me and then back out to him, and that magnetism allows me to feel connected to Edwin and allows me to feel like that's the key in the door, the ticket that allows me to say, I'm in this place where there's a lot for me to understand. I have personal stake here. I'm personally implicated. I can learn things from this person that are germane and pertinent to my life, that there might be family pattern I can glean from. And I don't think there aren't many people in the world that I feel so comfortable, that I would feel comfortable or that I would feel connected to, that I would have the ticket or the key into their lives in that way. I would still be an outsider looking in. And for me, I need to be an insider, and, you know, with open access to the garden of the person or the milieu that I'm exploring. That's almost a priori requirement for me.
You called it the delicate garden of family.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that delicate garden when it comes to pointing a camera at them and having them appear in a very public arena.
Well, it's not only pointing camera, it's opening up discussions and conversations about family secrets or family patterns or, you know, suppressed history or events that people don't want to talk about or are uncomfortable talking about, or, you know, it's, if you step in the wrong place, and this has happened with my films. I mean, if you step in the wrong, using that metaphor of the garden, if you step in the wrong place, you can hurt someone. You know, you can. I mean, one of my uncles one of my uncles saw Intimate Stranger one time and said, "I'm sorry, it's too upsetting. I can't ever watch it again." You know, and I didn't make it with the intention of upsetting him, but I pressed some buttons. The film pressed some buttons, and that's part of the collateral damage, the potential for collateral damage that you have to be very careful about. Yeah. I mean, in a way, every family has a psyche, you know, and it's networked in different ways, and it's cross-referenced and cross-pollinated in different ways, and you can touch something here and it affects something over there, and there's no predicting, you know. So you have to be careful, because I'm not making a film to harm anyone or hurt anyone, and sometimes even, you know, the pursuit of a truth or the pursuit of an understanding of an experience can still be painful to people, as benign as it might seem to me, or as noble as the pursuit of truth or understanding might be, you know.
Was it similar for you as it was for me, particularly with 51 Bird Street and dealing with my father? That, I mean, for me it was the camera, but you know, it's making a film.
Yeah.
You know, does that allow you to ask those kinds of questions that you would never ever dare ask your family or your father in particular in real life?
Well, I'll refer to Nobody's Business now, the film about my father. There was this idea that I had that whether I used the interview in a film or not, that just doing something, quote unquote, for the record, quote unquote, for the record, would have a kind of power and would have a kind of I'm trying to think of a word that's not power, but like importance, that we would both be on a kind of stage, you know, so that we couldn't bullshit one another, you know. It would be documented, and so that created a bit of pressure. And in that pressure, we would both, it's not about being on your best behavior, but we would both have to face up to that we were having a real conversation that you know, would and could have implication, even if I didn't use it in a film. And you know, a so-called man-to-man talk in the case of my father. And that was really important to me to do that. And in fact, you know, I just want to jump ahead to say that having done that and then having made the film about him, I can say that when he died, you know, my heart was heavy, of course, but my head was a lot lighter than it would have been or could have been had I not made the film, and even before that had that conversation with him in which I can, you know, ask him those questions. Yeah. So much stuff was, I don't want to say healed, but was released. A lot of energies were released, you know. I mean, the truth is, he still thought it was a crazy, you know, ridiculous film. I never convinced him of anything in the film. You know, his resistance is as strong as ever throughout the film. But of course, he never got the ironies that he reveals more about himself in his resistance, about his character, about his soul, about his personality. He reveals more about himself through his resistance than anything he might have said proactively by agreeing to cooperate and participate. Yeah. And he never got that irony, and, you know, an irony it was. What I came to understand and wanted to believe is that my father, by participating in the film, despite his resistance throughout, he was helping me with my homework. That's what he was doing. And after all these years, having the opportunity to do that again, and I thought that was really beautiful. I mean, it made me think about our relationship in a different way. It was an expression of love, a mutual expression of love between us, the back and forth, despite the ostensible sparring that goes on.
Did he stop harping on you about not being a doctor or a lawyer?
No. He never... listen, from his perspective, and this gets to your theme of personal filmmaking, actually. From his perspective, you know, he wasn't paying attention, and suddenly his son is a filmmaker. So, isn't it common sense, from his perspective, that if you're a filmmaker, you're supposed to make films about subjects that people are interested in? Isn't that the whole idea? And it makes perfect sense to me because he's thinking, if you're making a film about me, from my father's perspective, I'm making a film about him. He didn't invent anything. He didn't cure cancer. He didn't invent Velcro. There's no ostensible reason that anyone should be interested in him on any level. It doesn't make any sense. Why make a film about me? It's ridiculous. I'm just an ordinary person. I lived an ordinary life. I got married. I was in the army. I worked hard. I had 2 kids. Story, end of sentence, end of paragraph. Story. That's the story. That's the story of my life. And so, he could never reconcile that.
What do you do when you encounter resistance?
I haven't encountered resistance, at least not with a capital R. At the beginning, nobody took me seriously because there were no precedents for what I was doing. I mean, when I made Intimate Stranger, everyone agreed to talk with me, and I had long conversations with my uncles and my mother and my grandfather's friends. I went to Japan, I talked to his colleagues, business colleagues, what have you. But everyone thought, particularly in the New York area, my uncles, my mother's brothers, my grandfather's children, thought that at very least I'm doing a family history. I'm learning the family history, putting it together, which they thought was both a noble and potentially valuable thing. And that if I made anything, he is a filmmaker, they thought, then, we'll have a screening in Uncle Al's living room one day of whatever it is that he makes. They're thinking sort of, family scale, small, extended family scale thing. When, again, I thought, which also is very sane and credible, particularly at the time. And then I just happened to say, well, it was a bit of a change of plan because we're not going to show the film in Uncle Al's living room. We're going to show it at the New York Film Festival in Alice Tully Hall, where there just happened to be 1,100 seats. A big living room, New York City's living room. And that changed things because then they realized this was not just for private consumption. This was for a broader audience and, who were going to see it, who were going to judge it, who were going to respond to it. And, then it was on television and then, the game changed enormously after that. This film I made called Wide Awake, which is a film about insomnia, my insomnia. If I thought about access, let me back up and say that I felt as someone who'd been suffering from insomnia and for whom sleep was a very, very problematic subject, literally my entire life, that I'm as qualified as anyone to make a film about insomnia, I would think. And so how could I have gotten access to that? Well, I could have put an ad in the newspaper, filmmaker looking for insomniacs who might be willing to share their stories, allow me into their bedrooms, or maybe allow me to film some of their visits with sleep doctors and their therapies accordingly. And that would have been one way of getting perhaps wonderful access to then generate a film about sleep. Or conversely, I might have gone to some sleep doctors, sleep clinics, and said, can you introduce me to some of your patients? Maybe the next couple of patients that walk in, maybe I can film your meetings and so forth. Anyway, I could have gotten access, what I like to say is from the outside looking in. But I thought, well, I have a different kind of access. I know someone who's been suffering from insomnia his whole life, who is willing to do whatever it took to help me make the film, who would let me bring a camera into his bedroom, whose wife was okay with allowing a camera into a bedroom, whose wife was even okay using that camera in the bedroom from time to time if circumstances warranted or allowed, who wasn't afraid to make fun of himself, someone who gave me access to his dream journals, someone who they were going to have a baby soon, which I knew would bring other levels of sleep issues into the up front. And then finally he was a filmmaker. The guy was a filmmaker. In short, I had access to my own story and my own life and my own circumstances and my own insomnia. And what I like to think that translates to is that I can make a film about insomnia through that access from the inside out.
So make the case for people who don't know personal documentaries, or for critics who do have a sort of chip on their shoulder about it being narcissistic. You know, make the case for why they're important.
Well, let me make the negative case first.
Oh.
And this is a sort of cautionary tale to filmmakers. Okay? You have to be careful when you make so-called personal work. Viewers will know right away if you're doing so to get revenge on someone. Viewers will know right away if you're over-sentimentalizing someone or your family or some, you know. Viewers will know if you're if the only reason you're making your film is because you think that this family member or that family member was really important and unsung, and you're doing so to, like, just for the sake of lauding them, you know. What is it? It's sentimentality, revenge.
Helps to have a sense of humor too.
Yeah. But the thing is, there's something about grudge. There's a negative. You get to hold a grudge. If you're holding a grudge against someone, you're getting back at someone. The point is that those kind of raw emotions, you know, are part of the. You have to be able to mediate those raw emotions. You can't just make a film with that in mind, you know? I mean, I often think that, and perhaps you do as well, that every film I make, I am a kind of an ambassador for quote-unquote personal filmmaking. Because you want people you want audiences and critics alike to think, to realize, to understand, to accept that there are stories that can be told that are personal in nature, okay, that come from inside out, that allow us to think about the human condition in different ways, that allow us to understand what it means to be human, what it means to be implicated in family systems, again I say for better or worse, and that it's an important perspective to take. You know, it's a difficult dive, right? It's a difficult, perhaps even more difficult, perhaps the most difficult, I'm not sure, way of trying to approach the human condition, you know, dealing from personal experience with a personal perspective on real people in real lives, in real circumstances, and in real families, you know, with real stakes. But that there is the possibility for a transcendent experience that allows viewers to better understand their place in the world.
What's the hardest thing about making a personal documentary?
Well, it's the transcendence question, you know, where at a certain point it doesn't matter. The names, the dates, the places don't matter. The specificity doesn't matter. That you've moved into a place where you're in the river of broader human experience, and that you've approached a kind of poesy, a place where the poetics of life, and where the unpredictability of human experience and the fragility of being human, and questions of identity and questions of memory and questions of family systems can play out in ways that people see themselves, in ways that the audiences and viewers can look at themselves in ways that they otherwise would be unable to. One of the hardest things for me is negotiating the fact that I'm the so-called director of the film, but in some cases I'm also inside the film. I'm one of the subjects of the film. So that was never more obvious and also excruciating than in Wide Awake, the film I made about my insomnia. So imagine, there I am, it's like 3, 4 in the morning, I'm in bed, and I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy. I can't sleep in general, and now I have the extra added burden, the extra added chaos, the extra added weight of this film that I'm making. What's it about? My inability to sleep. So you can imagine the crazy mirroring, hall of mirrors that's going on. And I'm saying to myself, why did I do this? This is excruciating. This is hell. I can't sleep anyway. Now I can't sleep because I'm making a film about my inability to sleep, and it's really driving me crazy. And I'm speechless. I don't, and this could go on for years until the film's finished. I won't be able to sleep. Why did I agree to do this? Why am I doing this? This is really the stupidest thing I've ever done, and all in utter sincerity. Meanwhile, that's the subject of the film. That's the insomniac speaking. Meanwhile, the director part of me, somewhere else inside the cranium, is saying, this is fantastic.